Hello and welcome to another episode of Lawbogadas with your favorite attorneys, Missy Duarte and Connie Pena, two lawyers, Latinas, moms on a mission to bring awareness and perspective about the issues that are important to you. I'm Connie Pena. I'm a licensed attorney in the state of Florida, practice family law and family-based immigration, helping families and individuals transition into new phases of their lives.
And I am your co-host, Missy Duarte. I am a licensed attorney in New Jersey and Florida, with my office located in Hackensack, New Jersey, where I specialize in personal injury. In other words, I represent accident victims get compensation for their injuries, pain, and suffering as a result of the negligence of another person, business, or entity.
So follow us. Our handle is Lawbogadas on all platforms. You can catch our latest episodes on anytime on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can send us a DM on Instagram, or you can email us at info@lawbogadas.com.
We're everywhere.
Everywhere. So today's episode 8, we want to talk to you about essentially deciding your path. You know, we've gotten a lot of comments, kind of questions, and from what we see out there on social media, so many people are struggling, whether they're in the beginning phases of their, life and career decisions, and also people that are right smack in the middle of it with what to do, where to go, and the steps that they want to take. So that's what we want to talk about today, and maybe give you some insight into our path, what we've gone through, what maybe regrets we have, what advice we would give our younger selves, and in turn, what advice we can give to those of you listening that perhaps have been going through the same kind of issues and just racking your brain with, what am I doing with my life?
Right. Yeah.
So Missy, let's kind of kick this off with the basics, right? Who we are, our culture, our identity, our childhood experiences as Latinas, children of immigrants. Do you feel that had any impact on your career path, the choices that you made in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for the listeners, my family's originally from the Dominican Republic, and they moved here, obviously before I was born. I was born here in the United States, born in New York City, in a little area called Washington Heights, which is like a little DR. So, culturally, the idea was, my mom's a physician. She's a doctor. She came here, and there's that whole expectation. I think culturally in the Latino community, you're expected to be a professional. And it's, for us, it was it went without saying. A lot of it was, my sister and I, we were expected, to do your homework, to have good grades. It wasn't something that where my mom was like, how's homework today? Like, let's go over your math. Like, no, these are the things that are expected of you. My mom was essentially like a single parent, raising the two of us, very busy at work. She's very stressed out about managing her work schedule, managing us. My sister and I were very much involved in different activities after school, whether that's cheerleading, track, basketball, softball, on top of like our academic work schedule. So, I think it was, I don't ever independently remember my mother saying you have to do this track. But I do remember her approaching her about a certain prospective profession that I wanted to look into, a teacher, and specifically, and she was like, absolutely not, literally, absolutely not. It's very little money, very little, appreciation for it. And, I do have now that I have a daughter, I have a completely different appreciation for it, and I get it. But really, my heart and soul was into music. That's something that not a lot of people know about me. I played violin since I was about in fourth grade, and I was very good. I was second chair, and I transitioned into playing the bass, electric bass. I was a very good musician, had a very good ear. So really my heart, even though I was considering teaching, my heart was in music. I wanted to produce music. I wanted to be involved in that avenue. So if I'm approaching my mom with the idea of hey, I want to be a teacher, and it's like, absolutely not. Imagine, my feelings if I approach her with, hey, mom, I want to be in the music industry. That's not something at that time.
You're crazy.
Yeah. tú eres profesional. Like I'm a doctor. Tú tienes que ser profesional. Like you have to be a
Right.
professional. So, I mean, she never really said that, but like I didn't feel
That's what
comfortable.
you perceived, right? That's
Correct. Like
we learn a lot more as children from what we perceive than what we're directly told. So,
absolutely. So if that's my approach in terms of getting involved in education, imagine what the response would be if I said I wanted to be involved in the music industry. And, part of me wishes I kind of went against the grain on that one.
mhm.
Not to say that I regret being an attorney, but my true passion is in music. Still. Oh, so
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
mouthful. That's a mouthful. But how was it for you though? Getting to this point.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like I ended up becoming an attorney as not so much as an expectation in terms of being told that I needed to do it or because I had family that did it, because that is not the case at all. So again, to give a little bit of background, I was born in Chile and I moved here with my family when I was around 2 years old. Um, and my parents were not professionals as your mother was. Um, but they worked really hard for me to, I was always expected to go to school and do well. And I've been lucky enough to have like um an easy time with like test taking and things like that. Like everyone's always very envious of how I have like very easy photographic memory and I do very well on tests. So academics was always something that I was kind of pushed into. And I felt that it was always an expectation, an indirect expectation that
Yeah.
I'm smart and I also have to help people. And therefore, what am I supposed to do? Right.
Right.
I've seen these memes that I can totally relate to online about like, oh, translating legal documents when you're 8 years old at the dinner table, writing letters for people, explaining things to them. And you feel like so appreciated.
Mm,
And then you kind of feel like this is what I guess I'm supposed to do because you're used
yeah.
to being that caretaker,
Yeah.
even though that may not necessarily be what you truly want to do. When I was younger, I actually wanted to be an architect. I love traveling. I love looking at buildings. Um, like I love every country I go to, I love going to like the churches and I like sit there and I am in awe of just like, how was this
Mm,
built without a computer? Right?
yeah.
How are they still standing? And I'm always been fascinated by that. But I never actually brought it up, maybe kind of similar to you, not so much because it would be shot down, but because
Mm,
that's not what you hear about. When you're
yeah.
little, you hear like doctor, lawyer, business.
Right.
Like there's so many things that can be done, but I find that there's not a lot of it. Like the career day kind of idea. I feel I wish that there was more of that because
Right.
frankly, even now sitting here today, I couldn't even tell you how I would begin to go about doing that. Like, what does an architect make? Where would I work? What kind of cities is this job viable in? Like, am I really like designing a little building or am I doing something else? And I was very good
Sure.
at math. And I probably would have, done well with that. But I just gave up before I even started.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just did the practical thing in the sense of what I felt like I was expected to do.
Right.
And so that's kind of how I found myself there. And even just finding the type of law I wanted to practice
Mm.
was a mission. I don't know how that was for you. Like, but let's go back. Do you kind of remember when you ultimately decided to go down the path of becoming an attorney?
Yes. I was actually in college at the time. So, I mean, traditionally, let's remember, like musician, very like that's what I was interested in. Undergrad, very similar. I thought I was supposed to, undertake a certain profession. There are certain resources that are available now, I think, to kids. I think it's interesting how, you as a child, you go through, your K through 12 system, public, private, whatever, and you're just expected at 18 to, go to college and like have the rest of your life figured out. I'm like, I haven't had to figure anything out for the
We're
first
in our mid
18 years of
30s
my
and we're
life.
like, what's happening?
Correct. I'm like, what's going on? Someone help me.
Right.
But the first 18 years of your life, you are under, the care and guidance of your parents. And now you're expected to have the rest of the trajectory of the rest of your life figured out. I'm like, that is crazy in and of itself. So, I mean, I chose psychology. I am, as a kid, very observant, still am. So that's something that interested me. And I was a psych,
Is that
uh,
why you also like El Chisme?
maybe, maybe not. I think that's also no, I was gonna make a joke. Like Latinos, we love a good cheese man.
We
I will
do.
not speak. I will not speak on behalf of all Latinos. But I know how to keep a secret. So maybe this did in fact work out with it.
Right,
With
exactly. That lawyer
confidentiality.
confidentiality, but
Exactly.
all the juicy details.
Exactly. So, I mean, I was a psych major, double major with criminal justice. So I thought maybe I could get involved with the FBI, um, get involved in some kind of counseling. It took a different direction. I was involved in I was working on campus. I had multiple jobs. I was I went to a D1 school. So I was involved in D1 sports. It took a different direction with one of my internships. And really, this is the story I always tell. I was working with one of the board members who turned out to be one of my mentors. And one of the things that he said to me is, I know that you want to help people. And the best way that you can help people is by being able to communicate, whether that's orally or through the written word. And that's what law school does for you. That's what law school can do for you and the people that you want to help. So traditionally, I never even considered this path. On it, I'll be honest, it was always, and I think my sister was the one who everybody thought would be the lawyer, or go down that path. I never thought it would be me. So that's something that I kind of got involved in late in the game. I think. I mean, is it late in the game? Who knows?
No, but yeah.
Mid- but at that time, it was considered to be late in the game. So what I did was I ended up taking a year off to kind of reflect, take the test, and see if this is something that I was actually interested in doing. And so I did, I have, and here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it was a little bit different in the sense that I had this general idea that, okay, I'm going to go to college and I'm going to go to law school. It was pre-law, even though for those of you that don't know, being pre-law doesn't really mean anything other than you have an intention of going to law school,
Right.
which is different than pre-med, where there's a requisite amount of courses and credits that you have to take in certain subjects. So I was pre-law, but I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I didn't know any lawyers. My parents didn't know any lawyers. I'd never been to a lawyer's office. So I'm kind of going off of what I've seen on TV and what I'm imagining as an attorney, right? But I did do a lot of searching in the sense that, so I started off with my major in political science because I was like, well, I just assumed that's what you're supposed to do when you're going to go to law school.
Yeah.
And I went to the University of Miami, and I found that my classmates were very annoying because they all they were kind of insinuating that they wanted to be politicians. And I didn't want to be a politician. And so it wasn't very interesting to me. And I ended up changing my major into criminology, which is really just a sociology major, because I also am interested, like you are, in the psychology part, but not in the brain part. I was interested in the behavioral part, as in why, we make assumptions about people that are from this community are delinquents and criminals and they go down that path. But why? It's not all of them. Yeah. And not all, people with advanced degrees and wealth also commit crimes. And I just found these behaviors to be very fascinating about how people who are in the same environments, even siblings, can come out so differently, right? And that's that I've always been interested in people and cultures and learning and understanding. That's what took me to that. And I just did criminology, which focused on those theories about how people find themselves in these kinds of situations.
Sure.
The college, within the university, that it required also a minor. Okay. And then there were other electives, and I have never been one to want to waste my time. So I was like, well, if I don't want to take a bunch of random electives, I'd rather do something else. So I ended up double majoring with French because I'd been taking French since I was in the 9th grade, and I was like, might as well keep going. So I had that double major, and then I minored in Portuguese. So it was always because I was very interested in people and how they are and how they behave and how they communicate and cultural differences. And that's always something that's, really been very interesting to me. And during my time there, I tried to take a lot of these like seminar classes, like these presentations about different career opportunities. I remember going to one about the the Department of State, where they're like, you can work at US embassies abroad and you live in a different country every 2 years and this and that. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Now I work with them on the other side as the immigration part, and they are just a mess. Yes. Um, but I was always doing that. And even in law school, I was like, what kind of lawyer do I want to be? I remember going to talking about, I was like, oh, I want to do international law. What does that mean? I just travel to Paris and sign documents with people. And no, that's not what you do. You work for Visa. And just deal with things like that. And I also saw how people would say, I didn't get to go to a lot of my kids' soccer games, but I paid for their school and I'm proud of that. And I was like, this doesn't seem great.
Right.
But I ended up just kind of figuring that out. And it ultimately went down the field where I met you, where we were at the public defender's office, which to me wasn't a decision that I automatically came up with. I mean, how did you decide to ultimately go to the PD's office versus the state attorney's office?
I'm being honest. That's just kind of how it worked out. I was actively interviewing for both. I initially thought I wanted to get involved in immigration, but really I wanted to get that firsthand experience in the courtroom. And I knew that was a route, going PD or being a prosecutor, that would afford me versus, private practice, getting involved in immigration. Yeah, you're in court, but it's different, right?
We're not even going to go there about how nonsense it is.
So I wanted that aspect. I wanted that additional edge. So I kind of shifted my focus in getting internships and clerkships and experiences with other practitioners that were actively involved in the courtroom. So, I mean, I got the offer. Initially, I started out in Pensacola. So I was working a year before I met you in Fort Lauderdale. I was working in Pensacola at their public defender's office, and it was amazing. It was a great experience. And it was personal circumstances. I decided to transfer down, and I had an interview with Fort Lauderdale and they offered me a job. So, I mean, I absolutely loved it. I think, they literally threw you in. I always think about that my first day in Fort Lauderdale, I was thrown in the middle of that calendar call with my judge. So I loved every minute of it. I'm fortunate enough that I was able to get that opportunity. And of course, that's where I met you.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I did an internship. So with the whole criminology thing, at first I was very much like, why do people commit crimes, break the rules? That's preposterous. Everything is so easy. Not accurate. I had a very vanilla sheltered life, and learning about all these things really kind of opened my eyes. And I went to the state attorney's office to do an internship. And I didn't really like the culture there, to be quite honest. And especially since I feel like a lot of people think of the state attorney's office, we're thinking of the very serious crimes and safety of individuals. And then I'm like, why are so many police officers stopping teenagers on their motorcycles? I had one case, I'll never forget this case, stopped him because he had his girlfriend riding on his handlebars. What? Is there nothing going on in Broward County that this is the crime that you're stopping today? Yeah. And it's just I really couldn't deal with the nonsense. And so, but I wanted to see it for myself. And so I went there. I didn't like it. And that's when I did my CLI, which is a certified legal internship at the PD's office, which for those of you that don't know, it's an opportunity that some places afford, where instead of going to class for a semester, I worked, paid my tuition and worked for free. But I was in there and I loved it. And, that's where I ultimately interviewed. That's the only place I applied, because it was kind of, it's not a given, but it was clear that was where I was going to be working once I passed the bar. So that's where I went. And frankly, Missy, I mean, kind of transitioning into this next section here, why did you leave the public defender's office?
Honestly, personal circumstances. Not originally from Florida. I'm from New Jersey, and I needed a change. So I made the decision to leave the PD's office. I believe that was in 2016, to go back home, if you will. And, within that theme, I was interviewing for different offices up here, same in public service. and it just because it wasn't working out. I don't know why. Um, and I had an interest in, I was like, well, we're in the theme of like moving back home, transitioning.
You have an opportunity to start fresh.
There was an opportunity, a civil opportunity to get started in plaintiff's personal injury. And, that's very similar to what we were doing as PDs. I mean, you're meeting people at some of the most difficult portions of their lives, times of their lives, and you're helping them manage and get through that process. So the laws are different, obviously, and how you come to meet your client is very different, obviously. But a lot of those traits, a lot of those things that I learned initially as a practitioner, very much are applicable to what I do today. So I mean, that's how I started
Yeah.
and why I changed. What about you?
I left because of the money. I'm not gonna lie, I could have stayed there maybe
Yeah.
forever. Maybe. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed like just being a lawyer and like
Mm,
having the resources. There were investigators. I didn't have to worry about what my client could afford, which is
sure.
something that turned me away from continuing um, criminal defense in the private realm because
Mm-hmm.
it was personally devastating to me to say, client, I need more money for you for to do XYZ in your case, and
Yeah.
they couldn't afford it. And for me to say, is a person going to go to jail because of this? Like
Right.
this is the reason, because but for this, and I was like, I can't do that.
Right.
Which was the same thing with immigration that I stopped doing. Um, like the immigration court, because people are literally giving you everything they have for a 95% denial rate. I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard when you truly care. I'm not saying that people that do those jobs don't care. That's not the same thing. What I'm saying
Mm-hmm.
is for me personally,
Yeah.
I was going to end up, you know, being homeless because I'd just be like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And, it's unfortunately that it doesn't work that way. And
Right.
when I say because of the money, it's because um, my student loans were too much. It was more than 50% of my paycheck having to go to pay my private loans that I had gotten. And because they didn't qualify for income-based repayment. And so the day that I was started Googling a second job, I came to the realization that I needed to leave
Mm.
because I said I didn't spend all this money on school and kill myself in school
Yeah.
to need a second job
Yeah.
just to
Absolutely.
survive. I
Yeah.
was like, that's unacceptable. And so that's why I made the decision to leave. And I ended up not going anywhere else. I ended up just opening my office. Um, Also kind of fell into that
Yeah.
because it was more so my husband and my mom, like, you should open your office. You're so great. You can do it. And I was like, I guess I can.
Yeah.
Like, what's the worst that can happen? I go get a job, right?
Right.
And so that's why I left and I opened my office and I had my little desk and I didn't have any money saved. And here we are. Here
Yeah.
we are 7 years later, team of four. And it worked out all in all,
That's
right?
that's awesome though. No, that's amazing. I mean, it's very difficult to even get to where you are. You're very modest about it, very humble about it, but that's significant. Really like the ratio or the rates of success is very
Yeah, I mean,
not
I've
good.
I've seen
Not good.
people open up their firms and close them in less than a year. People invest so much money and just a combination of factors. It doesn't mean that people that their business didn't work out. It's not because they're necessarily bad attorneys or anything like that. It's just so many things that come into play.
Completely different grind for all of the reasons that we got involved in public service, not having to worry about the overhead, not having to worry about like, okay, like when's my next paycheck gonna come in?
Mm-hmm.
It's a completely different grind.
Yeah.
Now you are worried about those things on top of, running your case list. You're running a business. You are
Yeah.
practicing and you're a business owner, really,
Yeah. Yeah. I
primarily.
mean, and there's the worry of, I have to pay, where I live, but I also have to pay the rent at my
Right.
office. I have people relying on me for their
Right.
incomes, for their families. And, it's a whole nother stress of just going to work and doing your job and doing your hours and
Mm,
getting the work done, and then you get to just go home,
yeah.
right? There's the concern of, are the phones going to stop ringing tomorrow? Am I going to be able to, pay everyone's salary? Do I have enough work to keep everybody on, on the payroll?
Right.
Um, and then there's the whole balance thing, right?
Right.
Which is something that is a problem in general for a lot of people, whether you're an attorney, whether you're a business owner or not. Today people are struggling, and
Yeah.
this work life balance, dilemma that so many of us are dealing with, is pushing. I feel a lot of people down this path of wanting to start their own business, be
Hmm.
your own boss kind of thing. And I wish people didn't feel that they had to do that. I think that you should do it if you really want it, because
Right.
it's a lot of work, and you're not going to just be like in 6 months down the road, like, oh, now I'm,
Right.
basically retired, right?
Yeah.
Um, people need to really focus on what they want and understand what it's going to take.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With that, Missy, if you could go and give your younger self some advice, and I think that this would be good for our listeners too. People that are going through these thoughts or making these decisions, or maybe are
Hmm.
in a place like where we were, where we decided I want to make a change, whether it's for
Sure.
a personal reason or for financial reasons,
Sure.
what kind of advice would you give?
I think I would have just given myself more confidence. I think we, as culturally, as Latinos, as women, we suffer from like imposter syndrome. There was always like, I'm not good enough for this. Like, I'll never be, good enough to be able to manage my own business. And I thought about that for a significant time in my life. I've had coworkers or colleagues or just, other business professionals approach me and say, like, when are you doing this? When are you going? Like, well, what do you mean I'm not ready? Like, yeah, you're ready. And
Yeah.
I just kind of had this whole idea in my head that I would never be ready enough. And it's, there's never the right time.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
it's always circumstantial. I made a decision for myself when I did, because I felt like this was my opportunity. I saw a window and I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I have to do it now. Like, enough with putting it off and like getting the one more degree and, one more year of experience. I just have to get this, a couple more trials underneath my belt. It's like, no, like I'm completely capable of doing this. I need
Yeah.
to just do it. What about you?
I mean, in terms of like advice on the personal
Yeah.
level, I agree that the confidence thing is a big one. There's people out there doing things worse than you are, and they're 100% more confident than you are about it, right? There's always people like that, and we need to give ourselves the credit. And I struggled with that today too. Um, and actually thinking about what we want. I mean, I think
Mm,
we especially as women too, we worry too much about the expectation of what we're supposed to do, what we should do. You know, Perhaps had you gone down the music path and I had gone down the architectural path, we'd be maybe happier than we are today. Not to say that we're
sure.
unhappy, but it's one thing to only if we, when we're doing things for external reasons instead of internal reasons, the satisfaction is not going to be the same.
Right.
On a practical level, my advice would be, you know, money is important in the sense of, well, if you're going to go to school or pick a career path or whatever, go to the best school that you can actually afford.
Right.
Understand how these student loans are going to work. Those numbers are shocking. People are taking 20, 30 years to pay their loans, which is not what the generation before us was taking to pay, because the cost of education has gone up so much. And there are so many things that people can do that don't require $250,000 investment.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you make a very good living. You
Yeah.
make a very good living.
Oh my gosh. I have clients that have, some of them have a 4-year degree, some of them don't, and are making 5 times what I was making when I went to the PD's office. And it's just like, and they didn't have to indebt themselves the way that I did, you know?
Right. And we're not saying like school is not the root, right? We're
No,
just
it's
saying
more
like,
about understand how it's going to work in your pocket, and
correct.
like how that you're going to have to pay this, how long it's actually going to take for you to pay.
Mm,
You know, you're not gonna invest $500,000 on something that's going to get you $30,000 a year, right? That's kind of
right.
the balance that we need to think of. And the other thing that I never did, short of the interning when I was already in law school, I didn't really know anything practical about my field. I know that, you know, I like being a lawyer, but I do hate the crap that comes with it, in the sense of things that I cannot control, like
Right.
people's pettiness, other attorneys trying to like do things below the belt, you know, mistreatment sometimes from the bench, right?
Mm,
From judges behaving in ways that they shouldn't. It doesn't rise
yeah.
to the level of, making a complaint, but it does rise to the level of I don't want to take cases in front of this judge because I can't deal with them,
Correct.
right? And these things that maybe had I understood them better, I would have a better mindset and be less frustrated because I expect it. As opposed to me thinking that we're all over here with like on this, beautiful path with our sword in our hand and fighting the good fight. And there's a lot of people out there that don't have that mentality and are not trying to be helpful. And I wish I would have known that. I wish I would have had more of that practicality involved in the selection of my career,
Yeah.
to guide me better or better prepare me at
Right.
least, because there's a difference from, watching Law and Order SVU, which I used to binge watch
Mm-mm-mm.
um, before law school. Then after that, it got kind of frustrating, but
Right.
there's a big difference there. Case gets solved in 30 minutes,
Yeah, I would,
trial and surprise witness and confession from the stand, right? Like
the whole
that doesn't
thing.
happen.
I can't.
But but there
Can't
was
do it.
that's what I wish I would have had, was the ability to do that. And I think that people in our community in particular who like people like me, who my parents didn't know other professionals, like didn't know doctors and lawyers and engineers and architects and things like that. I kind of didn't know where to turn. And your guidance
Right.
counselor, your public high school can only take you so far,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, come on. So that's something I wish that I had. And maybe a better understanding of business planning. Like I've learned a lot. I've learned so much about taxes and, insurance and liability coverage and
Yeah.
all of these things that you don't realize until you're in it, until you've started a business, that these are things that you have to kind of look down the line to see what's going to be needed from you,
Mm-hmm.
in any
Mm-hmm.
type of hustle, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. Well,
All good tidbits.
yeah, I mean, that's a little bit about us, I guess. I don't know if Missy, if there's anything that you want to add to our listeners in terms of helping them maybe reflect and make decisions for themselves in this kind of area.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a passion, even if it's not something that you do primarily, maybe look to ways. I'm always looking for a way to kind of integrate my interests in music into what I do today. It hasn't really been as much as I would like to, but explore that. Don't necessarily dismiss it because it's the non-traditional path. There's so many resources out there for you now. And I mean, ask questions, get connected. There are so many people that started where you are. Don't be intimidated to ask questions. I think, people get kind of scared or they don't want to seem like dumb or like ignorant, but we all started at zero. Like
Yeah.
forget the hype, forget what everybody else is talking about. Like we all started from zero. Like, so ask questions, take advantage of that. There are people out there that genuinely want to help you and guide you and be that kind of source for you. So, explore your interests. See if that's not something that you can do primarily, like how you can still integrate that into your life to, if it brings you joy and happiness. And, ask questions, I
Sí
would
se
say.
puede.
Sí, se puede.
All right. Well, thank you, Missy. It has been a pleasure as always. And I
Yes.
hope this was useful for anybody that's kind of racking their brains to kind of put that spark in your mind and give you something to think about and consider as you make these choices. Or maybe you're at a point where you're thinking about advising your kids about this, so that they can do what's right. And I hope
Yeah,
it's been helpful. And
absolutely.
we will catch you next time on Lawbogadas. Thank you for listening. Again, we are Lawbogadas, two lawyers, Latinas, moms on a mission to bring you perspective and awareness about the issues important to you. Bye.